Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute. Thank you to everyone for joining today. We're just going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Alexandra Puritz, and I am a program specialist with the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program. And I'm also joined today by a few of my colleagues who would like to also introduce themselves briefly. So Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Parati. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Ocean Acidification Program, and I'll pass it to John.
Hi, I'm John Tomchuk. I'm the Federal Program Officer and will be assisting with the grants.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie and I'm a Knaus Fellow in the Ocean Acidification Program Office.
Awesome, thank you. So this is our team, and just nice to put some names, faces to names. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to start off briefly with some polls. So Natalie, if you could kick that off, please. Are you all seeing that?
We're seeing the polls and we're still having entries come in.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm not actually able to see it. So Liz or Natalie, if you guys want to share the results.
Sure, thank you for answering which geographic area you're coming in. That will help us assess where we might expect questions as we go through today's presentation. And now we have one more poll that will hopefully inform our presentation today. So we had, Alex, we had all attendees representing all of the regions except for the Midwest in attendance. And it looks like almost 60% of our attendees have not applied for a federal grant using the grant online platform, and 40% have experience using this process. Thank you for completing our polls.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Liz. Great, well, for those of you that are new to this, hopefully the webinar will maybe answer some questions you have, and even if you've applied through grants.gov before. If you have lingering questions or some confusion, hopefully this will be helpful to you as well. So just to get started, I do want to let everyone know that this presentation is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. I also will send out the slides to you afterwards so that you can have direct access to all of the links. So we're going to start with reviewing our objective and priorities, then talk a bit about our target audience for this funding opportunity, as well as some information about the award itself. We'll talk a little bit about registering for the grant systems, requirements for the letters of intent and the full proposal, as well as what components are included for evaluation, and some time at the end for Q&A with us. All right, so the objective of this funding opportunity is to respond to the gaps identified in the NOAA Ocean Acidification Education Needs Assessment Summary Report and/or the goals in the NOAA Ocean Acidification Education Implementation Plan. So we do have both of those linked here. The other objective is to prioritize and engage target audiences for ocean acidification education and outreach, to match ocean acidification community needs with existing research, education, and outreach activities, and to develop innovative approaches for community involvement. Priorities for the funding opportunity itself include the development of education and outreach products that incorporate data interpretation or visualization, multimedia education tools, so this could be things such as a video, infographics, etc. Discrete hands-on lab modules that incorporate and align with NGSS or Common Core standards. And lastly, protocols or tools that could be for ocean acidification community science programs. Our target audience for this federal funding opportunity is particularly to serve underserved and/or Indigenous communities or tribes, with the goal really to promote stronger connections between diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and ocean or coastal acidification, specifically as it relates to ocean literacy, stewardship, or workforce development. So again, the target audience for this funding opportunity is underserved and/or Indigenous communities or tribes. Our total funding is expected to be a maximum of $400,000, depending on appropriation, so this number might change a bit. Our goal is to fund somewhere between 6 and 10 projects, and each project can have a maximum of $50,000 for no more than a 2-year period. So before you actually start applying to the award, there are some things we recommend that you do. So you might have seen the notice of funding opportunity on grants.gov, the original link where you might have read about this opportunity. So you will submit or your institution rather will submit applications via grants.gov. And in order to apply in grants.gov, institutions first have to register with sam.gov. And I've included the link here that tells you more about registering for SAM, but that's the first step. In addition, to complicate things even more, NOAA is transitioning from using grants.gov to a new system called ERA Commons. So also in the meantime, when you're registering for sam.gov, we also recommend that you register for ERA Commons because our platform will be transitioning. So even though it's starting on grants.gov, you also need to be registered on ERA Commons, and I've included the link for starting that process as well. Just to flag, registration for these systems can take up to 4 weeks. So we really encourage you to do this sooner rather than later. So if you are thinking about applying to this opportunity, in addition to starting to put together an LOI, I do encourage you to have your institution register for these new systems. So we're gonna dive into the requirements of the LOI, but first we do have another poll question that we'd like to ask. So Liz or Natalie, if you could help with that, please.
Okay, so it looks like we have about 30%, 30 to 37% of attendees have not written or submitted a letter of interest for a federal funding opportunity, whereas about 60% have.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So for this award, LOIs are not required, but we do really recommend that you submit them because this will allow us to better help or guide you through this process. It can be a bit of a burdensome, complicated process, and so we want to do whatever we can to help make that easier for you and to be able to answer any specific questions you might have. So if you send us that LOI ahead of time, we do kind of know who's applying and what help you might need, kind of the direction that you're starting to take with your project. So we definitely recommend that you submit an LOI. If you do submit an LOI, the due date is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on September 15th. So in a couple of months. And we just ask for a paragraph. It doesn't have to be anything too long or anything, but in that paragraph, you should include the names of the principal investigators, contact information, your institutions, if a yes or no, if a partner has already been identified, and a short summary of the project and community needs that it will be addressing. And again, this LOI is not required and it can just be one paragraph sent to me, and I've included my email there. So again, we definitely do encourage you to submit LOIs, but not required. Now for the full proposal, which is not due until February, I just wanted to walk you through the different components of what is required in the proposal. So I'm not going to read through every single item here, but we do have a slide dedicated to each one. So we will delve in just one second. Anything that's highlighted in blue text are required federal forms. And so I just quickly want to focus specifically on those 5 forms and just explain a little bit of what is included in each one. And these will be automatically required on the grants.gov like package when you're applying for this award. I have included direct links to each of the forms as PDFs just for ease of access. But just to review each one quickly. So the first one is the SF424. This is basically going to serve as like the cover page for your application, and it will include the total amount of funding, basic applicant information, like contact information. And as I said, this will be like the first page of your application packet. So you have the link there. The second form is the SF424A. This essentially serves as your tabular budget, and it should correspond with the budget justification and narrative that you will be including within the application package. So we've included the PDF to that as well, but that form is essentially your budget. We have the SF424B, which I recommend you read through and sign and date at the bottom, but it's pretty straightforward. Have the link there as well. For the CD511, this is about certification regarding lobbying. So whether or not your institution lobbies the US government, you are required to complete the bottom section of that form. We have a link there for you. And then for those of you that are engaged in lobbying activities, you must complete the SFLLL, but this is only if your organization is engaged in lobbying. So if it's not applicable to you, you do not need to submit that form. So hopefully having each of these links will help you start to prepare some of those forms. So moving on to the other elements of the proposal. Now we're going to break it down section by section. So these are all of the required elements that we're about to go over. So for your cover page, it should not exceed 1 page, and it should include the project title, the list of the lead PIs, and the total federal funds that are being requested, as well as cost sharing amounts if that is applicable. Next is the proposal summary. So this should not exceed 300 words and should include an overview of the proposed project. And some of the items that this should include partners, the target audience, and the number of people reached. So that is your proposal summary. Next is the actual project description. So this should not exceed 6 pages, and it should include the need being addressed, the target audience, the objectives, how and where objectives will be met, as well as data sharing plans. So that is the project description. Next is the evaluation component. So this should not exceed 1 page, and it should include a well-defined set of goals for the project and a plan to collect and report basic evaluation outputs. It also should include plans for meeting the goals and objectives of the project and for tracking and measuring progress on outputs, as well as short-term outcomes. So that is the evaluation plan. Next is the project timeline. So it should not exceed 1 page, and it should include a timeline in table format that include contributions from each partner. Next is the budget justification and narrative. So the actual budget itself, the tabular budget, will be included from that federal form that we just discussed, but the actual justification and narrative component would be here. And it should include a justification of personnel costs, supplies and equipment, travel costs, and cost sharing or in-kind contributions. And I just want to note that for the evaluation component of the budget, it should be no more than 10% of the budget for the evaluation plan. So just wanted to flag that for you. Next is technical experience and qualifications. So this is per each principal investigator, and it should not be longer than 1 page per each principal investigator. In that 1 page, it should include a description of programmatic capabilities and ability to successfully implement and manage the proposed project. So that could include details such as the person's expertise and qualifications, their areas of knowledge, the resources they may have available to them or their ability to attain them, as well as organizational experience and past history in performing similar tasks. So again, this should be 1 page per each PI. Next is the NEPA questionnaire. So this is related to the National Environmental Protection Act, or sorry, I might have said that acronym wrong. But for the NEPA questionnaire, this is only required for projects that will have new environmental data. So if that does not apply to you, please just say not applicable in the application. But if you are going to be collecting new environmental data, and this is particularly, for example, if you are running or developing a community science monitoring program, you would be collecting new environmental data. So if that is the case, you can reply to the questionnaire, and I've included the link to access that. And in particular, you would be required to answer questions 2, 5, 7, 43, and 50 of the questionnaire. And you can find the questionnaire in the link provided. But again, if you're not going to be collecting environmental data, just say not applicable. And lastly, the data management plan. So this is only for projects, again, that are collecting new environmental data. And if that applies to you, please look up in the NOFO, this particular section. We have more information available about what should be included in the data management plan. So I just want to refer you back to the NOFO for more information on this section. But again, if you are not generating data, a data management plan is not required for the proposal. So again, you could just say not applicable here. So those are the various components that are required in the proposal. And now I just want to share with you a bit about the evaluation criteria that we will be using to review proposals. So the first component, which is 35%, looks at importance and relevance and applicability of the proposal to contributing to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and priority needs identified in the NOAA Ocean Acidification Education Needs Assessment. So that is 35%. Next is technical merit, which is 40%. Then qualifications of the applicant at 10%. Project costs also at 10%. And the data management plan and technical soundness at 5%. I am going to go into each of these components now to share a little bit about what is being included there. So for importance or relevance and applicability of the proposal, this is looking at, is there intrinsic value in the work and is it relevant to NOAA's diversity, equity, inclusion, and access efforts. So specifically, the degree to which the proposal is addressing and supporting ocean literacy, stewardship, and/or workforce development, particularly in underserved and/or Indigenous communities or tribes. It also looks at if it is addressing the goals of the OA Ocean Acidification Education Implementation Plan and the needs identified in the NOAA Ocean Acidification Education Needs Assessment, as well as looking at solutions that are locally and or regionally relevant. So those are the factors that are included in the importance and relevance section of the evaluation criteria. Next is technical merit. So this criteria ascertains whether the approach is technically sound or innovative, if the methods and partnerships are appropriate, and if there are clear project goals, objectives, outcomes, and evaluation plans. So within that 40%, 20% will be looking at how the project will be executed logistically, and if the details are sufficient to determine how goals and outcomes will be achieved. 10% will be looking at the proposed partnerships, and specifically if the project includes a partnership between federal and non-federal science and educators, communicators, or tribal or Indigenous communities or organizations. And the remaining 10% will be looking at the proposal's evaluation plan, specifically techniques for evaluating success and impact. After technical merit, we're looking at overall qualifications of the applicant. This is pretty straightforward, but it's looking at whether or not the applicant possesses the necessary education or experience, training, facilities, administrative resources, etc., to accomplish the project. Next is project costs, determining if the costs are realistic and commensurate with project needs and time frame. And lastly is the data management plan and its technical soundness. So this looks at if the data management plan is required, if it ensures that the data collected or created will be made available to general users in a timely manner, free of charge or at minimal cost. So that is a review of all of the components of the proposal. Again, we really want to encourage everyone to submit LOIs, and we're happy to take time now to kind of open it up and address any questions or concerns that you might have. So we will have our team helping in the chat, but in the meantime, please feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat box, and we can start going through some of those. So thank you so much for joining, and please feel free to reach out with any questions either now or down the road. You have my email, so thank you. So let's turn it over to the chat and see if we have any questions to address. And I welcome my colleagues to hop in at any time.
Sure. Let's see, we have some, so yeah, please put the questions in the questions box. We have 2 questions so far. The first is, what are the requirements for match, such as cash percent, cash, or in kind?
We can't hear you, John.
Do you want me to answer that?
Go for it, thank you.
So match is not a requirement for the award. I'm looking at there's no cost sharing or match requirements.
Great, thank you. The second question.
And that's in the NOFO too. So if you look at the NOFO, you'll find that information in there too.
Great. The second is, would international audiences be considered? And I can answer that. I would say international audiences are considered, particularly if they traditionally fall under U.S. territories or communities that are partnering with U.S. territories. Preferences for audiences, again, are listed in the resources in the notice of funding opportunity, including that needs assessment document. Jan, who posted this question, if you have specific questions, feel free to email Alex and she can address that more specifically. The next question I have, are projects in U.S. territories appropriate? Yes. And the next question, did you have any template that can help in writing a federal proposal? And I'll leave that to either Alex or John, whether or not there are digital templates that can be used.
I don't think we have like a ready-made template for this, but what I would recommend is through kind of the breakdown that we've just given, I would follow basically these slides as like the template in terms of different application components. But I will also take a look and see if we can find any other templates that might be available, in which case we can send it out to everyone who attended today.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question here, is this restricted to educational institutions or is it open to, say, CBOs, NGOs? This is open to any other institution, as long as that institution or organization or partners address the needs as listed in the funding opportunity and meet the needs for audiences that are the target audiences, which again are the underserved and or Indigenous communities or tribes. In Puerto Rico, it's very hard to find some help. This is a comment, help with templates. We were writing for Nonprofit Commercial Fishermen's Association. So again, I would recommend perhaps submitting a letter of interest, as well as kind of using the sections. Each one of these slides could be a section of your proposal, and you just want to address the criteria that we listed today. I will mention, and I put this in the chat, that everyone here who is attending or registered for this proposal, for this presentation, will receive a copy of these slides, including the links that are included within. And we will also be posting this in the video of this presentation on our website shortly. All right, next question.
Just to add one more thing there quickly, your institution might not have a grants management specialist or grants management team, but if you do, we do recommend that you connect with them about this opportunity because they might have experience with submitting opportunities on grants.gov, etc. So if you do have that available to you, we recommend you connect with them as well.
I have a question here. Can some of the funds be used for administrative purposes? For example, paying someone part-time that deals with contracting, timesheets, etc.
I would say the answer to that is yes, but make sure to elaborate on that need in the budget justification.
And show how that is connected to the actual project work directly.
Thank you for that clarification. Are curricula to educate school-age populations possible? Yes, this is a common type of project that falls under this funding opportunity. I think it was one of the first few slides. One of the major objectives of the Ocean Acidification Education Implementation Plan, one was to create curricula or content that meets NGSS or Common Core standards, and that was for formal education, such as educating school-age children. You could also apply that to an informal education program as well.
And I pulled up that slide that you were referencing with the priorities.
Great, thank you. Are there examples of past funded projects? We'll get the link in the chat for you, but we just launched a new website with a projects portal, and there are education projects that are listed under there, and you can see examples of the projects that have been funded in the past. Next question. Where will the slides be posted following today's orientation? Again, if you registered for this and arrived late, you will receive that directly in your email. We will also be posting this notification in the coming days that will include the copy of the slides as well as the recording, as well as all the link to the notice of funding opportunity and other information. I have a comment here, at least one example will help for what a proposal might look like. Thank you for that feedback. And are you accepting, denying LOIs or providing or providing feedback? We will not be denying LOIs. We'll be providing feedback on mainly the purpose of this letter of interest is to help support people through this federal application process and to ensure that it's appropriate for this funding opportunity as it matches the priorities and goals and intended audiences, and so that you'll be provided that feedback. Well, the LOI feedback will not include our specific comments as to the particular merit on each of the scoring criteria. Are previously successful grants posted anywhere for us to use examples? Yes, as I mentioned, our webpage under the projects portal, you can search and filter under the education and outreach tag and see the projects that are listed there. How much funding and how many grants are you hoping to fund? Provided budget for the fiscal year 2024, up to $400,000 may be provided for this particular funding opportunity, and each proposal up to $50,000 for a project duration no more than 2 years. Are non-federally recognized tribes eligible? Yes, they are. That includes in our Indigenous communities, in any sort of Indigenous or tribal organizations as well. Thank you for that question. Not clear on who can apply. I understand organizations, independent fishermen, LLCs, or have to partner. Any organization can apply. It's recommended with partnerships that allow you to implement your particular project that targets those target audiences, again, the underserved and or Indigenous communities and tribes. So you do not have to be an academic institution. You do not have to be a tribe. And often partnerships will apply for this type of opportunity. Hopefully I answered your question. If you have additional questions about that, please feel free to email us. Are the Great Lakes included in potential acceptable project locations? They're experiencing acidification effects as well, but not technically the ocean, of course. Yes, this proposal, that's an excellent question, includes ocean acidification, coastal acidification, and freshwater acidification in the Great Lakes. So that is eligible. Can students collaborate on potential multimedia tools? Maybe we could pop that slide up on priorities. The multimedia tools is one of the priorities that is would be an eligible project for this funding opportunity. Does it also cover rivers? It covers freshwater acidification, but mainly for the Great Lakes regions. If you have specific questions, perhaps you could email us about that. Or submit, that's where submitting a letter of interest would help us gauge whether or not this is directed appropriately to the right funding opportunity. And that's all the questions I see. Any other last minute questions? Please put them in this questions box. I'll also check the chat. Some of the major links that were presented here too are in the chat in case you missed it. But again, you will receive them along with the slides as a registered attendee of this webinar. Oh, my question is, was there or is there a needed release for student participation? This usually depends on your particular organization. So for example, if you were developing a curriculum that uses, that is for teachers that are going towards students, if your organization requires a release, then you would need the release, but NOAA itself does not need a particular release for those types of curricula projects. For example, if you are going to use a likeness or images of students, I would recommend checking with your organization about a release form for that, or for the schools or other organizations where the children are attending.
Thanks, Liz. Do we have any more questions?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all so much. If you have questions and maybe you want to, or you forgot to ask them, or you weren't able to attend, you're watching this as a recording, or whoever you may be, feel free to reach out to me. My email is provided on the slide. And as Liz mentioned, we will be sharing the recorded webinar as well as sending out the slides. So you'll have direct access to the links that are in the slides. But if we don't have any more questions, then I think that is it for today. So thank you so much for your interest in this opportunity. Thank you for attending the webinar, and we hope to receive an LOI from you. So take care, everyone. Have a good night.